Welcome to Empowered by Iron, the podcast for female strength athletes by female strength athletes. We are your hosts, Kristen Lander from Fiercely Fueled Nutrition Coaching and Mary Morton, PhD candidate and weightlifter. Together, we are Empowered by Iron. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Empowered by Iron. This week we have LVD Fitness CEO and co-founder, a 72-kilo powerlifter, Canadian powerlifter, Mallory Rowan on today. I'm so excited to have you on, Mallory.
I'm so excited to be here. I've definitely listened to your podcast a lot, and it's really cool to be included.
Thank you so much. So we're going to dive into all things feels, all things like everything LVD, which is an amazing company. If you listening haven't checked out LVD Fitness, just pause this podcast, go check them out. They're not your normal apparel company. I don't mean to pump it up so quickly, but they're not your normal apparel company. They don't just sell clothes. They sell clothes and help people, and it's a whole community. But anyway, I'll let Mallory talk about that. So Mallory, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We are, like I said, so excited. Kristen, you there?
I'm here. I'm excited. I'm just listening. Am I supposed to be talking?
So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about you, some of your background, and how you ended up as CEO, co-founder of LVD Fitness?
Sure. So growing up, I danced competitively. So I was a very classic competitive dancer. I had two older sisters and they did different styles. So whatever they both did, I had to do all of it. So I was really thrown into that. And then when I went into university, people don't usually continue competing in dance just because it takes so much of your time. So I started doing pole fitness, and it was really, really fun because it was super different, and it was similar to dance, but also something entirely new. And it had that same community vibe, but it also had a really big strength element to it. So I was going to the gym at the same time just to, stay fit, especially after dancing 7 days a week, all day, every day. I was worried what was going to happen to my body.
I hear you. You.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to the gym, and I was mainly training to get myself stronger for the pole fitness. And then eventually I kind of shifted and stopped doing the pole and just started doing the gym. So I'd been lifting heavy because I just had those big dancer legs. So my legs were strong. So all my lower body stuff was significantly heavy for my experience level. And so I'd get approached a lot in the gym, and people would ask me if I was a powerlifter, and I didn't know what it was. Then I always took it as kind of an insult, which I think is so funny now because I always assumed it was an aesthetic comment.
Oh, that's ironic.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't really get it. And I thought they were judging me based off what I looked like, as opposed to the fact that I was just lifting a lot of weight. I'd be no, I don't know what that is. I'm just trying to get my workout in. Please leave me alone. And then I ended up finding out about powerlifting, and then found out that it's not like that.
Not at all.
Yeah. And then I guess the rest is kind of history.
So you said you were a dancer. Actually, you find a lot of people who get into some of the strength sports are dancers or gymnasts.
Yeah. I think it's because they're similar sports in that they're very similar in that it's an individual sport, but also a group sport. I always joke with my partner, Josh, because I tried basketball in grade 6, and that was my only, I think I maybe played soccer in grade 3, but I hated it. We went to a tournament, and there was just these girls that I didn't know that were all up on me, and they were sweaty, and it was gross. And I was can we just chill? Why are you so intense right now? And it was totally not my scene. I just found the whole thing so uncomfortable. I'm I'm trying to throw the ball. Why are you in my way? Yeah, literally the opposite of what the sport's supposed to be. But I just I hated it. Whereas dance, it was you went up, you did your thing, someone else goes up, they do their thing, and it's just judged based off of criteria. And I think powerlifting's a little bit similar. No one's coming at me when I'm at the platform, so I kind of like it for that. We've got some bigger problems if they are, right?
Well, and like powerlifting, depending on where you're at, and like a lot of universities, they have teams, so it's kind of the same thing where an
Yeah.
individual performs, and sure, the individual is competing against themselves, but it's all brought together in some type of team effort.
Yeah, and actually, my very first meet, I had joined. Our school was the first school in Canada to have a team, and they just kind of started popping up. And there was actually a college and university specific meet, and that was my first meet, and it was really fun because it was actually like schools competing against each other, and you were representing your team, and it definitely gave it that like community aspect, and it was so cool to go into it with like 20 people telling you what to do. Like I have so much respect for people who like find powerlifting on the internet and compete for the first time by themselves. I'm like, how did you not have an anxiety attack? Like, so crazy.
I think that they do, but everyone around them recognizes it and they just like take you under your wing.
Yeah, that's true.
So then you went from powerlifting, you went from that, and then like what, the next day you started LVD. How did LVD Fitness come about?
Sure.
And can you explain what LVD stands for?
Yeah, so LVD stands for Lift, Visualize, Dominate. We don't actually talk about it that often, but there's a bunch of different meanings behind it. One being the process of powerlifting. People always say, don't you visualize first? But to us, you put in the work in the gym first and you do that training and you create that base, which is the lift. And then you set your goals. And a really big, consistent theme with a lot of the elite athletes is visualizing their lifts before going on the platform. And like they've already squatted it 600 times in their head before they have to actually squat it. And then dominate, that final step of achieving those goals. But we also kind of thought it was a reflective pattern for everyday life. And it's also kind of three categories of people. You have your everyday lifters, you have the visualize category, that's a bit more of our social aspect, and then the dominate, which is the competitive athletes. So yeah, I was at Carleton University in Canada, and I just joined the powerlifting team in my last year at university. And I actually had some courses in entrepreneurship. They're starting to like really push it in programs, and I thought it was super cool. I'd always been interested in it. Like I was working at a startup at the time. So the year before I had a group project, and we put like all this work into a product, and it was like some stupid travel toothbrush thing, and like I hated every minute of it because I was like, I don't care about this. Like I remember getting to like the finals for this pitch, and I was like, oh, I have to talk about this again. Like I was just like not enjoying it. So the next year we had a similar thing, but it was like taking the business even further than the first course. So I was like, hey, I'm going to do something that I actually would want to do. And it's funny, I actually started toying with like how to get women in the gym, and that's kind of where my head was at. And then I had talked about it with Josh, and we were just training partners at the time. And we just kind of recognized that there wasn't really like a brand that we identified with in powerlifting, because I think powerlifting was really going through a shift in like what a powerlifter looked like and how different that could be. So we just decided like, hey, let's make a brand that represents us, that represents our values. It's very minimalistic, which is how we are, as opposed to like messy with skulls and that kind of stuff. Like I'm not very hardcore. If anyone's seen me or my Instagram, like I'm not a hardcore person. What? I know, it's shocking. But yeah, we just decided we wanted something that represented us. So we partnered with WaterAid Canada, and we decided that for every item we sold, we would provide 1 month of clean water to someone in a developing country, because we thought a lot of athletes had the same kind of values as us. And it was really important to give back, but we're also busy as athletes. It's very common to have like a super active lifestyle, right? So we were like, how can we help people give back when they don't necessarily have time to research, time to volunteer, any of those things?
Mm-hmm. I absolutely love that, because Empowered by Iron, while we don't have the same capacity to give back right now because we, don't make money, but that's how it started. It was just us, and we found this niche that wasn't filled, and we were like, well, we need to fill it. And it's all about how there's lifting, just like you guys, you can lift, visualize, dominate in the gym, or lift, visualize in life. And for us, it's how the iron has empowered you in the gym and how the iron has empowered you in life. So totally. I love that.
Yeah. And you guys are totally giving back too, right? It doesn't always have to be.
We're working on it. We're trying to get there.
Right. Like
So
building
yeah.
the community. And I think that's what there's so many companies that are just so authentic and so passionate, like LVD Fitness and Empowered by Iron, and so many out there that I think that's becoming a trend is this like giving back to the lifting community in a variety of different ways, and not just the lifting community, but I think building this community around us is huge.
Totally. And I think like, not to dive right into it, but I think a very common theme I've picked up on, at least through like my personal Instagram, is like this feeling of being alone. Like, as depressive and sad as that sounds, like I think we all have so much going on in our head, and like sometimes we just need to hear other people talk about it and hear some podcasts and hear that like the Jen Thompsons of the world get nervous for me, you know, get some reassurance that like other people have these issues too. And I think that's huge for people to be able to see it on so many different levels now, like through Instagram, through podcasts, through YouTube channels, all that.
So, and I see that so much with women too, especially because, 5-10 years ago, there wasn't this community. It was just, oh, that weird girl in the gym lifting things. Who does that?
Yeah.
But now it's almost rude to not go say hey to a fellow lifter girl and encourage her at the gym. And I love that, because you're right. This world can be a very lonely place, even though we have social media to connect us in so many ways.
I mean, because our sport is an individual sport, that it's so easy to think that you're alone. And so I think that that's where the community building is so important.
Yeah. And I forget who said it, but I remember it was actually at like a marketing conference. There was a woman speaking about how like if you're a woman in the boardroom, like you think of something intelligent to say and then you replay it in your head and then you think about it 3 more times and then you like edit it and then you say it. And whereas a lot of the time with men, they just talk because they've always just been allowed to talk and everything they say is important, right? And I think like times are changing, but I think that's also part of it. It's like we just replay things over and over again in our head, and we're like overanalyzing everything, and we forget that like everybody else is also doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And as women, we're too overcritical. I mean, a lot of guys are very critical of themselves, but I feel as women, because of societal pressures to be many things, to be pretty, to be thin, to be motherly, to be loving, to smile all the time, all that good stuff, we always second guess everything we say to make sure, oh, is this going to be taken the wrong way? Is everyone in this room going to agree or not agree? And I really liked you talking about Instagram.
Yeah.
One of your most recent posts talking about anxiety. And I thought it was very interesting coming from someone who's a nationally ranked powerlifter and someone who has a business surrounding powerlifting, and you don't want to compete anymore. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. And I mean, it's not a permanent thing either, but so to kind of recap that, I was traveling like a lot. So I quit my job last June and Josh quit in September. So then we just kind of went like balls to the walls. Like we were like, okay, we don't have to budget vacation days anymore. Like, let's do this. So we did a 3-week road trip down the East Coast. So we drove from Canada to Orlando and then back. And then I can't even remember now. I think it was after that. Then we went to the East Coast in Canada and went to Halifax. And it was just like a lot. Like, and what I've learned about my body too is that it doesn't adapt well. And I think that was a really big lesson for me, is that like I picture us all starting on the same like ground zero. And then it's like, oh, you travel, everyone's body gets a little bit worse, or you get sick, it gets a little bit worse. But what I kind of learned is that like my base is probably like 75%. Like I'm never really 100% healthy, or my version of 100% is not the same as Josh, for example. So I think that was a really big realization for me, because we would travel and he could go hit huge PRs right after, and I'd be like struggling through my warm-ups and they felt like the heaviest thing I've ever lifted. Like, so I think realizing that we weren't the same person was a really big step, but it also made me kind of accept it a bit. It's like, okay, well, don't push yourself the same way, because you actually physically cannot do this without breaking down. Like, because you just want to believe you can do it, right? Like we want to be superwoman. So yeah, we were traveling, and I remember we were at like the college gym in a small town in Nova Scotia because we had to get our training in, and I started squatting, and like I just burst into tears, and I was like like it was one of those things. Luckily only Josh and I were in the gym, but like I was just like putting my weights on the squat rack crying, and like Josh has gotten a good radar now of knowing like when to not ask. And then yeah, I just went over, and he was like, "What's wrong?" And I was just like, I just like don't feel good, and I'm not enjoying this. And like every squat was stressing me out because it was like if a squat moves slow, I'm like, oh my gosh, how's my meet gonna go? Like what are people gonna think? Like if I compete, like do I need to place? And I have a really competitive weight class too. Like I think at just our provincial, so like a state meet, there was like 18 or so. And like the other classes would maybe be like 6, you know?
Yeah,
Wow.
72s are in powerlifting. That's like one of the bigger classes.
Yeah, and I want to say out of like the top 5 in Canada, like 4 live in my province. So it's also like the best of the best. But yeah, and then I just found myself, I was like looking at the 84 list, and I was like, well, there's only 384. So if I go 84, like the worst I'll do is 4th place. And like I started doing these games, and I was like, what am I doing? Like I don't want to do it. And at this point, like I was really just evaluating optics, because I'm like, well, that way I could still do it. And even if I had the worst day ever, I can like post that I came 4th, you know? Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, well, that's not really a great message either, because I'm really just masking like coming in last, you know? So I just kind of made that realization that I didn't actually want to do it. And it's kind of hard to admit that, I think, especially like you said, like my business is all around powerlifting. Yeah. And I still love it. Like I'll spend every single weekend at a meet. Like I love handling people, but it was just my body needed a break. And it was really tough admitting it for the meet. And like I spoke about it a bit on Instagram. I ended up finding out I had pneumonia, which was part of it. But
yeah, that'll make you tired. That'll definitely make you tired.
It was like, I remember actually I also had a breakdown after the doctor's appointment because I just felt like such an idiot because she was asking me all these questions about symptoms. And I was like, yes, I have all of these things, but I just haven't stopped to like realize. She was like, are you tired? I was like, yes, I'm exhausted. But I'm like, that's my life. Like, I haven't come down yet, you know? Yeah, and then I just found like I was relieved to have pneumonia, which is a weird thing because people would say like, oh, I thought you were competing. I'm like, oh, I got pneumonia. And then even with nationals coming up, like we have to do our provincials in order to do nationals. And I kind of used it as a way out because I was like, well, if I don't have provincials, then I have a reason why I'm not doing nationals. Even though I just knew I didn't want to do nationals because like we're doing a bunch of workshops, we're doing live stream, and like I really want to help out on that side and help build the sport, you know? Like I wanted to make that week about the other lifters. And I knew if I threw in competing in the middle, like it would be a lot harder to not be selfish that week. And so, yeah, I just found myself making all these excuses. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to do it. If I lose some followers because of that, like screw them, you know? And I think a really big moment too was at USAPL Nationals. Like I had quite a few women come up and talk to me about my Instagram. And a few of them after, like I went out and watched, and they're like 10 times stronger than me. So I was like, okay, they're not looking up to my strength. Like, and it was actually really helpful because I was like, yeah, no, you don't need me for strength motivation, you know? But yeah, it's definitely hard, and it's hard to admit that because I can immediately think of people that probably think my post is silly to say that I was so anxious about like not competing, you know? But for some of us, like it's those small things that just like eat at you. And the second I made the decision, like I started enjoying my training, like I was less stressed in general because I wasn't like worried about my training session every day. I was just going to go in and do whatever I felt like. And it was just really necessary for my mental health.
I think that's awesome. And I think, number one, I think that's really brave of you to say that and to say like, hey, I didn't want to do this. And then I was trying to find excuses to explain why I didn't want to do it. You know,
Yeah.
Like that's really brave. And I think that a lot of people can identify with that. And I just think that's competing's not always for everyone, or there's periods of time in your life where it's just not what you need to be doing. And we talk about often that if you're not enjoying, I mean, training hard isn't always fun, but in general, if you're just dreading the process and you're not enjoying it, it's time to take a step back and say, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah, like you shouldn't want to cry every time like a squat's kind of hard, right? Like
Right.
Well,
But I kind of,
I had the same kind of experience, but I ended up switching sports completely. It's not that I hated what I was doing. I'd go in and I'd be like, why am I squatting? I just hate squatting. I don't care if I squat 300 pounds. What am I doing?
Yeah.
And then I just ended up switching sports.
That's one way to do it.
But yeah, it's important to make sure it's not taking over your life. Because I also found like I wanted to get my endurance back up for running, but I wouldn't go for runs because I had to squat the next day and I didn't want to do like anything that would affect how my squat moved, you know? So it's about getting that balance back, I think.
So how does that make you feel as someone who owns a powerlifting company? Something that a clothing company focusing on powerlifting.
Yeah. Well, I think our main thing is we've always been like for the strength athlete and we focused in powerlifting. But again, I think it just comes down to like those values and like I'm still the same person and I still believe the same stuff about fitness and like I still encourage women to lift heavy. It's just that for me, like being on the platform wasn't the biggest thing in my life. And I think a lot of the times, like when we're working full time or we're students, like powerlifting is this amazing outlet for you, right? And I think I just was honestly like quite fortunate that with LVD turned into that outlet for me. And all of a sudden, instead of being like, oh, I need to get to the gym to get my mind off things, I was like, I got to get my workout over with so I can get back to LVD, you know? And it was just kind of that shift. And I think right now it's like LVD is my powerlifting. And then eventually I think I'll be able to pick it up again and give it that same drive. But like, it's really hard to do it when your mind's not there. And kind of like you said, like I was at the point I was like, I don't even really care if I PR, if I get this, like I just want to go back and like work on those emailers, you know, like I just want to get it in and go. So it's been nice to kind of change my workout to be more accommodating to that. And it's a lot less stressful. Like if I need to miss a workout, I just miss a workout. Like it's not adjusting everything, you know?
Do you feel so? I know that a lot of people, when they first get into like powerlifting, or if they have any type of disordered eating or over exercise, whatever, did you used to get anxiety if you had to skip training?
Well, I just wouldn't skip it. So it's kind of like, I guess so. But like,
would you like feel yourself debating whether or not to do this other thing that you really needed to do? Let's say it was, I don't know, an important family event versus going to training. Did you find yourself having trouble deciding?
Well, I found like I always just made it work. And I'm always an advocate for like making it work. And I think you can choose based off how important it is to you. Because you know what I mean? Like there's certain days where it's like, you could probably wake up at 5 a.m. and get your workout in. But is it there on your priority list that you want to wake up at 5 a.m. and be exhausted by your family thing at night? Like maybe not. So for me, I think before I just really prioritized it. And that's where it was hard too. Like we'd be at USAPL Nationals and like we'd be going early at night or late in the evening and like we'd be getting those workouts in. And it wasn't great training conditions too. So I do think that added a lot to it, right? I was starting to get a more negative connotation. And it was just about getting the work done. It wasn't about enjoying my workouts. It wasn't about properly warming up. Like it was like, did I get the squats in? Yep. Okay. Like run to the next thing.
Okay. So switching gears a little bit. Let's talk about body positivity in powerlifting. What are your thoughts about that? We always hear about women, especially women, men too, but a lot of women always wanting to cut to the next weight class or worried about all that stuff. What are your thoughts if you were to give advice to someone starting powerlifting, a woman? What would you suggest? How would you suggest she handles that, if I'm trying to word that properly?
Yeah, I would say until you're at like an elite level, don't cut weight. Just like don't do it. It's different if you have aesthetic goals for your own personal reasons and you want to simultaneously cut weight. Like, I totally get that, and I've been there. Excuse me. But yeah, I think people get really hung up on like, oh, well, I'm 65 kilos, so I have to compete 63. Like, it just makes sense. It's like, well, actually what makes sense is to fuel your body and to eat proper meals and to not stress over your weight and to be able to have breakfast the morning of your meet or eat a good meal the night before. So I think people get really skewed on what's actually important.
So I think
I love that you just said that. I love that you just said that. I'm like over here cheering. And I just think that that's awesome. And I'm not sure where, I think maybe, I wonder if it's partly social media that's to blame for people thinking like, hey, because they see elite athletes having to cut to make weight and they're like, oh, well, I should do that too. And it's like, no, don't do that to yourself unless you have to. Don't do that.
And I can totally see where the logic comes from, because if you're going to compete against 72 kilo women and you're 64 kilos, like obviously it would be nicer to compete against women who aren't that heavy and are like more around your range. But again, you have to think of that deficit, and it's just like unnecessary. And it's really not needed. And I've always found whenever I cut, it affected like my long-term cutting goals, because you would be so focused on making weight for that meet that after you would just like binge for no reason. You'd be like, I can eat pizza, I can eat donuts. And then all of a sudden you're like actually up 10 pounds, right? So yeah, I would say to not cut. And I do find it interesting. I think it comes like, I think it's kind of ingrained in us, unfortunately, as women. Like, everybody wants to be a size 0 or a 2. And now that's shifted a bit. But I still think we have those weird associations where it's not a number. Like, I was talking with someone the other day, and like, I think my first meet, I was like, I'm not going to compete 84, like, because I'm not 84 kilos, and I don't want it to say I'm 84 kilos to a certain degree, you know? Yeah. And it's funny because it's like, well, you can compete 84 and not be 84. It's not like all of a sudden you've gained 22 pounds. But it's like, that's how we think, because I'm like, well, I'm not. But who cares, first of all, if people think I am? Like,
whatever.
Yeah. But so I think that's one side of it, is we all want to feel like that smaller weight class. And it's the same thing. Like, I'll catch myself on a website, like, I want to buy the medium leggings because, I don't know, maybe that makes me feel like I'm closer to my leaning out goals. But it's like, I know that the large will probably fit better, but you're like, well, I'll get the medium. Like, why? The large will fit you, and no one cares that there's an L on the inside of your pants. Like, it's the most ridiculous thing, and I'm so guilty of it.
Oh, we all are. And like pulling out jeans that we've had for like 10 years and wondering why you don't fit in your high school jeans. Like, well, because you're 10 years older and you've changed.
And like, who cares? Because your butt and your legs probably look awesome in the bigger jeans. Like,
absolutely. And you feel better because it fits. You're not sitting there trying to like fix your body into these tiny jeans and we're like, oh, what's wrong with me? Would really, you just need to throw out your pants.
Yeah. I have leggings like that at the gym. I'm like, I'm so uncomfortable. I'm like, oh, maybe I should have bought the right size.
Right. Well, but then, so I saw another one of your posts where you're looking, look, I just stalked you on Instagram, like hardcore. Okay.
Recent fresh stock.
So you've been reviewing leggings, and you say that you come and you get that you can basically wear all the sizes of these different brands of leggings. And I think a lot of the problems that we have with body positivity and whatnot is we associate things with small and medium, but if I'm a medium in one brand, I might be a large in another. I might be a small in another.
Yeah.
There's really no standard to that. So we never really know, which is very frustrating.
Yeah.
But then if we're a medium, but we have to order a large, all of a sudden it's like, well, what? I'm a large now?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I've read an article too. I want to say it was H&M maybe. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but someone said like the place they work, like the sizes were actually getting smaller. So like if you used to be an 8, you're a 10, but it's the same size. And it messes with our heads, you know? And I think it's really hard for us to kind of remove that because we've learned it, like it's part of you. And it makes sense. Like, you think, I was a medium, now I'm a large, I have gotten bigger, right? Like, it just makes sense. Whereas, like, one brand, like you said, you could be a small or extra small, and the next you're a large. And, like, on another note with that too, like, I know I have big legs, but when I'm like the biggest size on a website, I'm like, what's that about? Because I am not the biggest woman I know. So, like, where are the pants for those people? Like,
That's a great question.
Where are the pants, people? Like, it's crazy though. Like, yeah.
It's just, I mean, I think these are so many things in society that we are trying to change, and there are some great companies out there that are trying to change this, especially for women. But of course, at the opposite end, you still have companies that not only endorse it but perpetuate it. But regardless, we can tackle that another day. Right now, we're just focused on you and powerlifting and LVD Fitness. So I noticed that LVD, switching gears, you guys sponsor all kinds of athletes. So
Yeah.
tell us about some of the athletes that you sponsor, and how did you end up sponsoring athletes, and what does a sponsorship mean?
yeah, so right now we have, I think, 3 women and 2 men, if that, yes, that adds up. So for our women, we have Jen Thompson. So I think everyone knows Jen Thompson, but 63 kilos from the US. We have Maria Hati. She is in between weight classes, actually, so she's kind of on the move. She's typically been a 57 kilo, and I think she's moving up to 63. And then we have Alyssa Smith, who's a Canadian 72 kilo. And then we have Ray Williams and Kelly Branton, who are our heavyweights, 120 plus men. And those are our 5 athletes. So for us, our sponsorships are really fluid and they're very casual. The nice thing about powerlifting is it's so different from the rest of the fitness industry. And because of that, we've been able to create really genuine relationships with people, and they've been able to show that authenticity when they speak about us and when they represent us, which is really nice. It never feels like they're getting paid to post, because that's not how we run it, right? So we try to do things like pay for their meet fees when they compete, help them out on that end. And then we mostly like send them product. We promote them wherever we can. We'll do photo shoots, and we'll help them with their businesses too, because a lot of them are trying to grow some personal brands. And we can, just help them from a friendly perspective there. So for us, it's just finding athletes who really represent what we believe in, their potential, their values is a really big one, because there's some really strong people, but they're a little bit controversial and opinionated in ways that doesn't necessarily reflect what we believe. So we've just kind of got this really strong team of people that we believe in and that have believed in us since the beginning. And I think that's a really big factor. Like, people always ask, like, someone like Jen, they were like, how did you get Jen? And I'm like, well, not to sound like cocky, but like, Jen asked us. And it was like the craziest moment of our lives, because we spent a weekend at this event where she was, and we were lucky to spend a lot of time with her and Kim Walford and just get to know them. And I remember leaving the event and saying to Josh, like, we always have these, like, wouldn't it be cool if one day things, And we were like, wouldn't it be cool if one day Jen Thompson was an LVD athlete? And then maybe a week later, she messaged me on Facebook and basically asked if we'd consider her as an athlete. And she said, like, I don't look for a lot of sponsors because I'm not out for money, but I want to work with people I believe in, and I believe you guys have what it takes. And I remember her saying too, she's like, I want to help you get out of your office, because when we had a Skype call, I was calling her from my office at work. It's just so like bland. It's classic like corporate world, and she was like, okay, well, let's get you out of there. And so she's been really big in like helping us take that step, which is awesome.
That's awesome, because I will say with the LVD athletes, it seems no matter who's posting, it just seems so authentic, just like you said. And it goes back to building that community and building a brand that people, you're not just a throwaway brand. You're not a brand. You're not like that. Gosh, what is that Instagram? Everyone has this where you you post a post and then 30 seconds later there's a
Like
comment.
choosing elegance.
Yeah, whatever
Oh
it
my
was.
gosh. They're awful,
Please,
awful.
beautiful. Please see IG bio link,
Yeah.
please. And you're like, what? But it's so
Yeah.
there's companies like that I don't even know what's going on. But then there's companies like you where people not only are they on board, but they're all in. And I think that's the type of thing we need in the
Mhm.
strength world. Not just companies, but I feel that for women, like we need that sense of that community and that connectivity, you know what I mean?
Totally, yeah.
And it's just a matter of building it, which is the difficult part, right?
Yeah.
And with anything like that too, it's like the pushback grows too, right? Like when there's nothing there, no one says anything, and then there's some good stuff, and then people have to bring in the bad stuff, you know, like, so we just got to keep pushing for more good.
You just yeah, and as long as it's like not earth-shattering, you
Yeah.
usually can make it through the bad stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah, Kristen, did you have something?
Where
Go
did the idea for supplying clean drinking water come from? And how did that incorporate into LVD?
Yeah, so are you guys familiar with the brand Tom's, like the shoes?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so Tom's does like a buy one, give one model. So we had kind of followed them and we were inspired by that concept. And then there's a Canadian company called 10 Tree Apparel, and they plant 10 trees for every item they sell. And we thought that was really cool. And we'd always followed them because they were on our equivalent to Shark Tank. It's called Dragon's Den. But same thing. Yeah, same thing. They were on it and we watched them and we just both loved entrepreneurship, and it was really cool because they were some young guys and it was something we were interested in, so we were following them. And then the more we followed them, the more we noticed people wearing it in the gym, and like, this is really nice, kind of like hipster clothes, but like really nice t-shirts. Like I would not work out in it, you know, but we noticed, like, I think other people have these same value sets as us because they're buying these apparel and they're in the gym. And it was just kind of this like boom moment where we put the two together. And then we were driving to an expo, the Toronto Pro Super Show, before we had launched. We were just going to check it out. And we just started brainstorming, and we realized like water, like everyone can relate to water, right? And as athletes, like we use water all the time. Like we drink water, we drink protein shakes, we make our oatmeal with water, you know, like it's a consistent factor in our everyday life. And it's just so crazy to me that people don't have access to something that we honestly take for granted. Like I have 2 water glasses on my desk right now, you know, like it's so easy for us. So it's just crazy that that's not a thing. And yeah, from there we just started looking at different companies that we'd want to work with, and we really liked what WaterAid was about. They focus a lot on long term, and we say 1 month of clean water, but it's not just that they're donating water, they're actually creating like the infrastructure, and they have courses to teach the community. So they teach people how to use the infrastructure that they're putting in. Something that really hit home with me when we first met with them, like they're saying just because they give you clean water, like people there don't know to wash their hands after they go to the washroom, because that's just not a thing. Like that's not in their culture, and you can't blame them for that, but there's just that education aspect. So they focus on that because that's not part of their life, right? We were brought up that way. But so they put a lot of resources into that, as well as the hygiene and sanitation side. So we just really like that combination. We really liked their brand in general too. And then we found out they were in our home city. So it kind of worked out. Yeah, we were like, that's a sign. Like, yeah. So it worked out really well. And then it was funny when we went in, we met with them, and I remember we just had a landing page website. Like you could just put your email and that was it. Like there wasn't that much info. And we thought we were going to get like big kick in the butt, because she was going on about how, like, you know, some companies come in here and they just kind of want to like put WaterAid on it so that they look like they're doing something good. And we were just like, oh shoot, are we being accused right now? Like, and then she was like, no, but like, I can tell you guys are very genuine, and like, I really appreciate where you're coming from, because we could just kind of walk her through our story and what we plan to do. And then they were like, yeah, we'd love to partner with you guys. And that was a little bit of a shocking moment for us too, because I mean, at the end of the day, we're just offering to donate them money, but it's a really big thing if they're willing to associate their brand with us and put that faith in us when we didn't even like fully have it in ourselves yet, you know?
Yeah. Well, sometimes you just need it's amazing what someone's tiny little bit belief in you or what you are trying to build will just light a fire under you.
Totally. And it was like a really big aspect too, because we were like, well, we don't want to launch without it because we can't just be like, we're just generally going to donate water. Like, we'll figure out who it's going to go to. Like,
Right.
Yeah. So it was really like they helped us build that base. And they've been really great ever since. Like, they've sent us photos with like kids holding signs that say thank you to LVD and stuff like that. So it's been a really great partnership.
See, that's fantastic. And I do love that there's the education aspect to that as well, because you can give people fish, right? But if you don't teach them how to fish,
Exactly.
they
Yeah.
they won't be prepared for life. So since you are a businesswoman and a lifter, I've got one question that can pertain to both aspects. What would you say is your most memorable, worst moment in business and in lifting?
Started like thinking of all the good times, and then you threw me with worst moment.
Well, we've been talking a lot about good things. We got to talk about some things that you've overcame, right?
Okay, worst
You didn't
moment.
just magically become this amazing CEO powerlifter, right?
Yeah. Okay. Lifting is going to be a tough one. I would say like in business, I don't know if I can pinpoint a specific moment, and I don't also want to say too much, but I think when we started to get our first bit of hate, I think that was really hard for me, especially when it comes from like other business people, because you're like, what, like you've been where I am, like why are you trying to like knock me out when you understand it, and like you think those are the people that would support you the most. I think that was really hard, and like you can never know why people choose to do what they do, and like I've always been lucky that I find I've been able to like step back and look at a situation and not get too invested in it, but there was like an incident, we'll call it, recently, and it's funny because it's still like it affects me, and I was texting one of my friends about it, and I'm like, you know, like I'm not upset for me, I'm upset that people choose to act this way. Like, I'm not like hurt. I'm not taking it personally at all because it's about them. It's not about me. But it upsets me that people act that way. And I was like, I just got to figure out how to get over it and like how to make it not bother me. Because I get this like feeling in like the pit of my stomach. I'm sure you guys have experienced it where like you just feel like something's not right, you know? Yeah. And I was like, I just got to figure out like how to get rid of that so I can just go on with my days. And she was like, you know what? I think you just need to acknowledge that it's always going to be there because you're actually human and you're a very genuine person. And it's really just like if someone says something mean, like it's going to kind of hurt, you know? And if people are doing things that aren't nice, like it's okay to be upset about it. And I think that was like a really big moment for me. And it actually really helped me through it. And I think going forward, like that's my go-to, you know? It's like, it's okay that I'm upset. Like, swallow it, like let it be upset. Don't try to hide it because it's there, and it's not like one day I'm just like not gonna be offended anymore, you know? Like I'd love that, but no. Like it's always gonna sting. So just like acknowledging it. And she was like, you know what, I'd be scared if one day it doesn't sting anymore because maybe that just means like you're cold now, you know? Mm-hmm. So I think that was a really good like learning experience, and that's something that's like recurring. Like we're lucky we don't get like a lot of hate, but it's just like I was talking about when you try to push for a good movement, like when you grow, there's always people that are gonna react, right? And it's unfortunate, but it's a reflection of them and not you. And in a lot of ways, it's helped us because people see that we don't react, and I think people gain a lot of respect for us from that side. And now I'm just procrastinating because I don't know a lifting moment.
That's okay. I'll give you more time to procrastinate. I'll add something to that.
Okay.
We had, do you know Janae Marie Kroc?
I don't think so. Should I?
Well, she's a big transgender athlete, or she was.
Yes.
She was. Yeah, you know her? So we had her on, and literally we've gotten almost zero hate up until that point. And then all of a sudden we get people commenting on, just saying horrible things about her. And just like you said, instead of, as much as I wanted to write a very sassy, horrible remark,
you got to draft it out like 7 times and never press send.
Right. We just simply, I decided for one of them, I said, well, I'm sorry we offend you. I'll just block you, and that way you don't ever have to see us ever again.
Yeah.
And then the other ones, we just delete the comments, because like there's no room for that in our brand. Just like there's no room for that in your brand.
Well, and I think a lot of one of the things that I think happens when you're building a community and there is pushback about things, it's like you can just ignore it, because those obviously aren't the people that you're trying to reach anyway. You know, they're the people that are having issues with it. Like, obviously they aren't your, like, they're not your customer, or they're not your listener in our case. And I feel like we have this responsibility to protect our community. And I think one of the best ways that we can protect it is just like not even, some things need to be acknowledged, but in terms of some of the comments Mary's referencing, it's like, we're just gonna, these people obviously didn't even listen to the episode. They're just saying stupid shit. So how about if you have an educated, complaint or thought about it, send us an email and we'll talk about it. But otherwise, go away.
Yeah. And I think approach is a big aspect too, right? Because if someone was legitimately upset and concerned about something in the podcast, they would have approached it that way. But when someone's just commenting, like, they're just being a child.
Exactly. And we've had people reach out to us on email saying that they felt something was wrong, and we talked to them about it, and it was totally fine. But it wasn't, a punch to the gut. You guys are horrible.
And I think it's important to realize that behind every business, even big ones, are real people, right? Like, we're going to make mistakes. It just depends on how we want to own it and how people want to respond to it too. Like, I used to do like a lot of tech marketing. So something that I always found interesting when I was at a tech conference that stuck with me is like, it's okay to say I made this and it's not for you. Like, as long as it's for someone, it's not for everyone. And like a good LVD example is we had that t-shirt that said raw, natty, proud. And like, it caused a lot of stir for some people. I remember that. Yeah. And like, people were just so butthurt. And I'm like, you know what? Like, obviously if you're not in the IPF and you're like public about being on drugs, like, this shirt was not made for you. So I'm not even offended that you don't like it, because I didn't make it for you. Like, and just because you don't like it doesn't mean that it's wrong and that we have to like bash it. Like, just calm down. It wasn't for you. Like, we get it. Thank you. Like,
the best way you can use your voice is by not spending your dollars. So if they don't like your shirt, don't freaking buy it.
I know. It's good. Yeah, I feel you guys there.
Are you ready for your worst powerlifting moment? If you don't have a worse one, you can give us the best one. But I like asking. It's like in an interview when someone says, "What's your worst quality?" and you're like, "Well, I'm too productive."
Yeah. I can't stop working.
I don't know, like, what comes to mind, to be honest, is not like a specific moment, but like, I definitely have had a lot of gym breakdowns where it's just like, for whatever reason, I just can't hold it in. And a lot of the times too, I think it's hard because lifting is an outlet for so many people. So when it's not going well, you lose your outlet to a certain degree. And then now you still have the frustration and whatever you were upset about in life. And now on top of that, now you're upset about your lifting. And like, there's just that breaking point just right there. And I think I've experienced that a lot, where it's just like a set is not feeling great. And I just like fully break down. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? It's fine. I'm crying in the gym and I'm going to own it. Like, and yeah, I think that's probably my worst overall. And then once I start lifting heavy again, I'll hopefully learn to deal with that a little bit better.
It's not easy. And then a lot of people, if you're like me, then you go home and you just eat your feelings. And that's not always healthy.
You eat the weight you were trying to lift. It's fine.
Right. And then you're like, you feel crappy on the inside, but mentally you feel a little bit better.
Exactly right.
All right. So kind of our final two questions as we wrap this up.
Sure.
So, Empowered by Iron, the podcast, is all about how women's everyday lives were directly influenced by the barbell, the gym, or training. How has lifting changed your life physically, mentally, or even emotionally, whether that's in the gym or outside?
Yeah, well, I think from a physical aspect, for sure, I've had like a huge change. Like I've posted some transformation photos, but I found like I was never seen as a big girl, but I was always heavier. I just like wore it well, I guess. So to see like where my body has gotten has been really big for me, and just showing me that I can, you know, accomplish something if I stick to it. It's made me feel healthier overall. Like I just like I feel like a healthy fit person, whereas before, like even though I was active, I didn't feel that same way. And I think like the biggest thing for me is mentally and emotionally, like it just really keeps you in check with your feelings. And I think it's given me a lot more confidence, like in just believing in yourself. Like I actually read a really great book called With Winning in Mind that Matt Gary and Susie Hartwick Gary gave me when I was like struggling with the mental side of the lifting, and like it really helped me, and powerlifting like has continued to help me with it. Instead of saying like I hope I get this squat like for a third attempt, it's like I know I will get this squat because that is what I do. And I think changing that negative self-talk that a lot of us have, like, oh, I hope this goes well, or like I don't know if it's gonna go well, learning to catch myself and change that, not only in the gym, but then applying that outside of the gym has been really big. And just being like, you know what, if you've put in the work and it comes down to that moment, like you can kick your own butt and you can do it. You just actually have to believe that you can do it. And I think that's been really, really big.
Finding the confidence in the gym and training, and then you can apply it to your life.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that because I second that.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about mindset a lot, and that's one thing I really had to work on. I was out for a while and came back into lifting, and my body not physically being where I was used to was really mentally challenging for me, and really having to work on that mindset was huge. I know Mary's working on her mindset a lot with lifting right now. And I think it's amazing what happens either inside or outside of the gym when you actually believe in yourself. Like, I don't mean just like, yeah, I can do this, but then there's this little thing in the back of your head that says, no, you can't. Like, no, actually getting rid of that little voice and truly believing in yourself and setting some crazy goals and achieving them is remarkable. It's amazing. It's one of the most amazing things in the world if we just get out of our own way.
Yeah. And I love how you said like that little voice, because I think like in my everyday life, I'm a lot better at like silencing that voice, but I know that it's there. And then I almost feel like in lifting, it brings it out more bluntly. Like I'm walking out a squat and I'm like, I can do this. And I'm like, can you though? And like, I'm really bad with that mental like self-talk. Like as I'm squatting, it's the worst thing, but it really like highlights it for me, and it makes me focus and like fix that. And I think like my goal is to not think that at all in the gym. And then I kind of feel like I'll be bulletproof from all aspects, you know? Like I asked Josh, because he's got a really strong mental game. I'm like, what do you think like when you're going into a PR? And like he's had some really big gains lately. And like it's to the point I'm like, you should jump this. Like if you're comfortable. I would be terrified because he's in like whole new PR territory, but like it's moving really well. And he's like, I don't know. I just like, I'm going to squat it or I'm going to die. And I'm like, that is not my brain. Like I am like, oh my God, don't hurt your back. Like you have to lift tomorrow. You have the rest of your life. Like, so finding that way to like dial in to the point where I literally just walk it out and know that my body knows what to do. I think that's my goal. And like I said, once I do that, I think I'll be like bulletproof from all angles.
Do it or die.
Exactly. It's terrifying. I was like, that is not how I live my life. I'm like, how can we do this and make sure we have 15 backup plans so that I don't die?
Oh, same.
Yeah. Same. And lifting just doesn't have time. Like you can't make that many backup plans when you're squatting.
No, because if you don't make the squat, that's it.
Yeah.
There is no backup plan.
No, exactly. So yeah, that's my goal.
All right. Final question.
Okay.
What do you know now that you wish you knew 5 years ago when you first started lifting and when you first started LVD?
Wow.
And you can break that up into 2 parts. I threw another one at you, and I'm very sorry.
It's kind of like less so. I guess it's still for myself. Oh, whatever. I'll just go with it. So I wish I knew like how powerful it was to just talk about things. And like that's been a real, I think in my 2017, like that was my biggest learning moment, was how good it felt, first of all, to just put it on paper, so to speak, usually an Instagram caption, but like just to say it sometimes just like helped me process things, because it was like that self-talk was over. Like it was just out there now. And the other thing too is like when your following does grow, it's like, well, everybody else knows now. So like stop obsessing about it because it's out there. Yeah. And I think just like, I never really used to post a lot of the stuff that I post now because I've been lucky to never have like extreme problems with it. But I realize like how many of us fall in that middle point where like, sometimes I think about like how much I think about food or my weight throughout a day. And I'll often think like, because Josh and I work like all day, every day together now. Like I'll be like, he definitely is not thinking about his food. He's thinking about if he's hungry or not. I'm thinking about like, should I eat that? Like I kind of want to eat it, but I know it's not like the best. And I'm like always constantly on that way. And I think a lot of people are in that in-between zone where it's like you don't necessarily have an eating disorder or you don't necessarily have like body dysmorphia, but you're constantly thinking about that stuff. And when I started kind of talking about it, like the response I got was insane. And I was like, wow, like people really need to hear that other people are thinking this. And like I even posted the other day just about how I'll get comments that I don't look like I weigh what I weigh. And like just talking about like what it feels like to hear that, because they don't mean it as an insult, they almost mean it as a compliment. But it's a very complex feeling when you've always been like hyper aware of what the scale says. And just like talking about that kind of stuff, again, to put it on paper just feels really like peaceful. And then to see how positively it can impact people, and to have people from like age 16 to like 45 message me and say like how they really needed to hear that today. Like I wish I could have poured my soul out for the past however long, you know, if I knew it could have helped that many people.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what we talked about kind of at the beginning of, we all feel alone, and we're constantly looking at social media, trying not to feel alone, but we're typically looking at people who are just trying to play the part, just trying to get you to follow them.
Exactly.
So when you find someone like you or Jen Thompson or Meg Squats or, you know, some of the other big names in powerlifting and weightlifting world that are authentic and talk about these uncomfortable things, you think, holy shit, I'm not alone.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's like, I always think Instagram's interesting because we're basically at a point where like the advertising agency used to be everything, right? Like, or the advertising industry, because that's all we got exposed to. And, you know, sex sells, and that's what they would do. And they would have the very stereotypical woman's role, and that's what we learned. And now we're in this position of power where like advertising is on social media, and it's like Meg Squats being asked to do sponsored posts, for example. Like we now have that power, and I think it's really important to do something with it and not sell sex and not say like, oh yeah, only the posts with butts and half naked can do well, because like that's the way the new Instagram algorithm is making it work. And like it's really disheartening. And I know Meg has talked about it a bit too. Like sometimes you're like, should I just cave and do that? Like, should I just post my butt? Like, because you're like, hey, if I'm gonna say a good message, at least people will see it. And like I think we just need to take back that power and say like, no, like we want to see real people. We want to see like every color, every size. Like we don't all have a 6-pack and like long luxurious extensions or like Photoshop apps, you know, like I think we need to just take back the reins a little bit and use the power of just being real and like talking about our periods, because they happen to every woman since the beginning of time, you know, like.
Yeah. And peeing while you lift and disordered eating, like everything. It's uncomfortable, but like we all go through it.
Yeah.
Why not be uncomfortable together?
Exactly, right?
That's one of the things that I talk about with some women that I know is talking about allowing people to see your struggle, because then people realize, hey, I have struggled with that too. And that's when like these things lose their power over us and then
Yeah.
bring people together, is when you realize like that person struggled with the exact same thing I did, and I totally thought I was alone. So I love that concept of just sharing your struggle, letting people see it, because it will help other people.
Yeah, and I think Mary even mentioned it earlier. I forget what she was asking me something, but she said, you know, like as a successful lifter and a business owner, it's like I think sometimes with those titles, so to speak, like people forget, like they think that you don't have the problems, and if anything, I'm like, mine are all just heightened now. Like I'm super anxious to start off with, and now I'm just gonna like overanalyze everything, not only in my own life but now in lifting, in my business, in my personal Instagram. You know, like it doesn't go away because you've figured out a way to still live at the same time. Like it's all still there, and I think that's really big, like you said, to see other people in other positions feel that way.
Mm-hmm. I love it. We need more authenticity on the internet.
We do. I forget what my hashtag was, but something about bringing normal back.
Hey, I'm all about that hashtag.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
We are so happy that you came on and talked to us today. Where can our listeners find you, and where can they find LVD?
So you can find on Instagram, my Instagram's at Mallory Rowan, and LVD's is at LVD Fitness. And websites are the same thing, so lvdfitness.com. And I actually just launched my personal website, malloryrowan.com. So that's got a business blog, a fitness blog, and a life blog. And then I'm also going to do like some downloadable content, some wallpapers, stuff like that. So you can find us. Instagram or websites are the best places.
Sweet. Well, we'll make sure for you listening, we've linked that down below. So go check that out. Give Mallory a follow and tell her we sent you. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it. Keep pushing and fighting the good fight, and you guys are doing awesome.
You too, girl. We're so happy you're here.
Me too.
All right. Bye.